What is up, fellow humans of the cardboard? Welcome back to Just Nuts, guys. Today I have a very exciting discussion video for you. This time we're talking about Traptrix, specifically trap holes, and which trap holes are the best trap holes for Traptrix, because I believe this deck is extremely playable right now. Not just pretty playable, I think it's actually like a really solid option right now competitively. Now you can argue with me all day on that if you want to, but listen, I think part of the reason this deck doesn't top that much is because not a lot of people outside of Bortle are playing it. And the deck's just been low-key, even if it isn't Traptrix or Trap Hole cards, has been getting support. And now there are multiple really solid engines this deck can be paired with. And that's really good because this deck needed it. This deck's way faster now. Whatever. We've got the Dogmatica stuff. We've got now the Amazement stuff. We've got 2 new Traptrix cards coming in Lightning Overdrive. That comes out in like 5 days now. So awesome. And the deck's also just generic. Any engine that's searching you out normal traps pairs really well with this engine, especially if it can like work alongside a normal summoning a Traptrix monster, which a lot of these can. So yeah, so there's really only 10 trap holes that actually matter. There's other ones. There's like Chaos Trap Hole, but that's a counter trap, so it doesn't even really have synergy with Traptrix. Traptrix cards only really get you access to the normal trap hole cards, and then some were just like really bad. They would never be playable. So we're talking about the 10 that you could even argue are playable in the deck. The first one's obviously Trap Hole. Not bad, but not good, honestly. This one's like the most vanilla one, but honestly might not even be the worst one, funny enough, because this came out in the very first set of Yu-Gi-Oh, I believe, core set at least. It's destruction, it targets as well now, and it has to be a monster with 1,000 or more attacks, so there can be situations that are kind of annoying for that as well. Maybe very specific situations where you needed to kill something less than 1,000 attack, who knows, but fine. This will start us off as a great benchmark because all of them are probably going to be better except for maybe 1 or 2, but it's a nice benchmark to start us off with. Next up is Bottomless. I seriously think Bottomless is extremely playable right now. The biggest downside with Bottomless is 2 main things. The first one is it can only hit monsters that are 1,500 or more attack, so there are certain decks that can somewhat play around this, or they just mainly combo off with smaller monsters until they get to boss monsters, so you can't hit them early enough in their plays. But the fact that it banishes is really nice. And it also destroys, and that's definitely a pain as well. A lot of things have destruction immunity at this point in the game. Like Dragoon. Like if your opponent just summoned Dragoon on you, you can't hit it with this. Because Dragoon, well, you can, but Dragoon won't be destroyed, and it only banishes if you destroy. So there are just certain things that can like work around this because it needs to destroy, and for that it's fine. But banishing is really nice. Hitting something like an Eldritch, if it's being summoned off of a Sanguine, is really nice just to get it up out of the game. I mean, they just lose access to that Eldritch for the entire rest of the game, which can be huge. So the removal is really nice getting stuff banished, but I think its drawbacks are definitely a little bit tough. Next up, Deep Dark Trap Hole. This one, again, is a little bit too specific. This one honestly might even be worse than regular Trap Hole. It only hits level 5 or higher effect monsters, but when they're summoned, it just banishes them, which is really nice. Doesn't destroy and then banish like Bottomless. Doesn't target like regular Trap Hole, just straight up banishes, but of course you are kind of hindered by what you're actually allowed to hit. Only level 5 or higher. A lot of decks do have 5 or higher, or they also just like play synchros. If somebody makes Borload Savage, this just beats Borload Savage, because Borload Savage doesn't have its negate yet. It needs to trigger to equip something from grave. That's when you hit him with the Deep Dark, and it's just gone in the chain link. So that's not bad. I love that it banishes, but again, it's a little bit too specific. There are definitely decks that just don't care nearly enough about this. So yeah. Floodgate. Floodgate is definitely one of the prime key cards here. Floodgate's insane. Okay, so the big things with Floodgate, again, does not target. A lot of them actually don't target after regular Trap Hole. But it Book of Moon's a monster, and what's really powerful about this one is after it books something face down, your opponent cannot flip it face up. The only way they can flip it face up is with another outside card effect. So they can't just like flip summon it on their next turn. If they're playing like Guru, they could attempt to do something like Final Battle the Guru back up, but you're probably not trying to floodgate trap hole a Guru anyway, because that kind of helps them. So you're probably just siding out the floodgate or hoping you never draw it. Which is cool. But the one downside with this card, specifically in the past and not as much now, was if you've had to book like a bigger monster, Traptrix really didn't have these like big monsters to be able to get over certain things. And so sometimes you'd book something big and it'd take you a while just to even find something that could clear it off the field. And so you can't go for game. You can't try to win the duel. You have to just wait until you have enough resources, enough and like an actual way to remove that card to actually get things going. But again, non-targeting, non-destruction, you can just book a Dragoon. They probably have a negate for it, but still, even sometimes just baiting Dragoon is good, and this will definitely do that. So really powerful. Obviously the drawback's just that they still keep the monster, but the rest is about as good as it gets for trap holes. Definitely a really solid one to consider. Next up we have Network Trap Hole. Not terrible. It specifically only triggers, and this is the downside, this one only triggers when your opponent specifically summons, special summons, from the main deck or graveyard. And I know that's not too specific, but the reason you want to have a more flexible interruption, just in general, not even with trap holes, but just in general, is yes, a lot of decks are going to summon either from main deck or graveyard, but that may not be the choke point you need to hit, right? Like that may just be like an extending play, and you can stop them from extending, but it's not necessarily a choke point. And they may still end on something pretty decent, and that makes this card a little bit lackluster, that it is a little bit more specific, especially in a deck like this, where if you're playing a trap hole, you're probably playing one of it. And that means you're probably, most of the time, searching it off of Mermelio or Sarah herself. And when you're doing that, your opponent knows you have it. So then they will attempt to play in a way where, like, I'm going to play in a way where my main deck, like, special summon or my graveyard special summon is not my choke point, or I protect it, or I just don't play into that, whatever. And so I think this one hurts. I think that's just like the pain of trap holes in this deck, is that your opponent's always going to know what trap hole you have, assuming you're searching them off of Mermelio and Sarah. And so you need to have the more flexible ones that your opponent just can't easily play around them and punish you for it. So this one I think loses out, but it does banish face down. Non-targeting banish face down is really nice. It's just a little bit specific, and your opponent's always going to know you have it. Almost always. All right, next up we have Void Trap Hole. This is another kind of specific one a little bit. When your opponent special summons a monster with 2,000 or more attack, you can negate the effects of one of those monsters, and if you do, destroy it. And I know that sounds weird, because like, what's the point of negating something if you're just going to destroy it? The one thing this does help you out with situationally is a big monster that has an effect on summon. So like they summon something, it wants to trigger, imagine something like Borreload Savage, right? It wants to trigger to equip itself with a link monster so that it can gain its negate effect. Well, if you're going to negate that, he's not going to get equipped, and then you destroy it. Or anything, you know what I mean? Just anything on summon that's just going to trigger, and you don't want that trigger to resolve. You negate that trigger and you destroy them, which is not bad. Again, though, it's one of those specific ones. 2,000 or more attack. A lot of decks can kind of just play under that. They're using all their extenders. None of their extenders are actually like 2,000 or higher. And then by the time they're actually going into certain negates, it's too late for this card, right? Like you didn't have a chance to plop this out. Maybe you were able to throw it in one of their disruptions, but with combo decks nowadays, I mean, they might have made 2, 3, 4 others, and now you're just like, wow, that didn't feel impactful at all. So again, a little bit specific for me. Next up is Time Space. This is actually one of my personal favorite ones. I've had some pretty good experiences with Time Space so far. This one, when your opponent special summons a monster from hand or extra deck, that is specifically it. Shuffle that monster or monsters into the deck, then you pay 1,000 life points for each monster returned. That can technically hurt, but outside of like a pendulum summon where they're summoning like 4 monsters, I don't really see you actually paying super significant life points. But I guess if you've already taken some damage, that can be kind of scary to put yourself in kill range. But generally, I don't think that's the biggest drawback. I mean, life points are a resource nowadays in Yu-Gi-Oh, so fine. What I like about this one is, even though it sounds a little bit specific, only hand or extra deck, it's not the same as main deck and graveyard. Extra deck is huge. Hand, maybe not as much, and you could argue hand is like whatever. But extra deck is absolutely crazy because just anything. I mean, go ahead and search of like the top 10 decks in Yu-Gi-Oh, 20 decks in Yu-Gi-Oh, maybe all but like one or two need the extra deck. You play a Zodiac player. As soon as they make a Zodiac, you can shuffle them back. Even if they're going to make Trident, try and take something with it, you're at least going to clear the Trident, and they usually can't extend too well after that without drawing like very specific extenders. So this card is really, really good in my opinion. I do go back and forth on deciding whether to play this or Floodgate sometimes, but I still think Time Space is a really, really strong one. Shuffles back into the deck, which is nice. That's non-targeting, non-destructive removal. Again, and out for a Dragoon. And I think it's pretty generic. Just so many decks summon from the extra deck that even if they know you have this, it's going to be hard for them to just not go extra deck, right? You just punish them for whatever they go into. All right, next up here we have Traptrix, Trap Hole, Nightmare. This one's also kind of interesting. This one's very interesting, actually. So this one says, when a monster that was special summoned this turn activates its effect on your opponent's field, you can negate that effect, and if you do, destroy that card. So this is almost like a Solemn Strike negate. Obviously, you're not on the spell speed level of a Solemn, but you're just negating an effect and destroying, which is kind of nice. The downside is, like, obviously it has to be the turn the monster was summoned. So in grindier games, if they had a monster still on their field and they attempted to activate its effect on the following turn, which can happen, we're playing a slower deck. Sometimes you just have to set cards and pass. That can kind of hurt. It has to be the turn they're special summoned. But it's still a pretty strong one. And I like that it's also like a different version of Disruption from the normal trap holes. Almost all the trap holes trigger on summon, whereas this one triggers when an effect is activated, which does change things up and potentially open up certain avenues for this card to be awesome. Also, I really like that this card gives more versatility to something like your Traptrix Rafflesia. And that's not something I brought up with the other ones, because all the other ones kind of work exactly the same, right? On summon, you can Rafflesia something. This one, though, on activation, you can Rafflesia them. And they may not be ready for that because they may not know that you're playing this, but this does give Rafflesia more reign to do more diverse kinds of interruptions, which is kind of cool. And you can't forget about Rafflesia because she is a very powerful card. So this one's really cool. But again, it's one of the slower ones. Like, if you're in a grind game, your opponent's probably going to have to summon at some point, but because of the way this one works, it may not be as easy to activate in a more grindy game. Going first, it's one of the stronger ones, actually, but outside of that, it destroys, doesn't target, but it negates something. So I think it's pretty good, but not great, right? It's just different, which also can be nice. Next up is Gravedigger's Trap Hole. I'm not gonna like, stall out on this one. This is the best one, right? Like, this just negates any monster effect that activates in hand, grave, or banish zone. That covers pretty much any deck in Yu-Gi-Oh, right? You think about Eldritch, you're just stopping Eldritch from using his hand or his graveyard effect. That's, Virtual World, every effect is activated in hand. Not only that, but it also burns for 2,000, so that is a huge bonus. Like I said before, this deck is known for not being super offensive, so getting that extra 2,000 burn is absolutely huge. And yeah, same thing. Gotta also consider Rafflesia, right? You make Rafflesia, maybe you've summoned more than 4 times. Your opponent's got that nib. You just burn them for 2,000. Go ahead and try and activate the nib. You'll just take 2,000, keep that bad boy in hand, and you'll never get another chance to activate it. This is the best one. Not gonna mess around with that. And the last one that's pretty interesting. This one might be the most interesting one, actually. Treacherous Trap Hole. This card is very interesting for the deck. It reads as follows. If you have no trap cards in grave, then you can target 2 monsters on the field and destroy those targets. The best thing about this card is that it can trigger at any point, right? This isn't a when something's summoned, when an effect is activated, when this, when that, if that, whatever. This card just says, as long as there's no traps in your grave, fire this off. So this is one of the better ones. You can search turn 1. Yes, you're going to want to fire it off as one of your earlier disruptions, but that's kind of okay because popping 2 monsters is pretty good. I know it's a targeting destruction, but because it's targeting and popping 2, it's still really super worth it. I mean, think about like Dogmatica Punishment, right? same thing. A lot of times people are just using Intis to pop 2, and that card's extremely, extremely worth. The one other thing I want to say with this card is you may read this and be like, but no traps engraved, John. That means after turn 1, this card is completely useless at all. Not necessarily, actually, because with Rafflesia, and I go back to Rafflesia, this card's really cool because it allows Rafflesia to want to trigger at any point. It doesn't have to wait for stuff to happen, like I said, but also it allows Rafflesia to be a little more offensive, right? The other ones have to wait for something to happen. You could summon Rafflesia on your turn, send Traptrix to just pop 2, clear a board, and then you still have Rafflesia to activate as a disruption on your opponent's next turn. I believe Rafflesia detaches 1 material, not 2. So if that's how it works, then that's awesome. I can't remember off the top of my head. If not, if so, it's a really cool play. If not, you could still use it to detach 2, pop 2, and then attack directly with Rafflesia just so you can make a Zeus, and that can save a duel. I'm just saying, right? There's a couple things going on there. So really, really cool. I think this card's a really cool one-of. I think a lot of these are one-of. So here's what I would say. Traptrix, a really, really strong potential one-of that may be sided out in certain situations. Like when you know you're going second, you probably side it out. It's most of the time going to come up going first, but still a really good one. Gravedigger's the best one. You're playing one of this, maybe even 2 of it in certain builds. So definitely keep an eye on that. You just got to decide where you're at, how good you think it's worth. Traptrix Trap Hole Nightmare. You also have to kind of decide on this one. Depends where the meta is, right? Like if this kind of disruption is going to be better than something like the other trap holes, then maybe consider it. It's one of the stronger ones going first, I would say. But if so, maybe it's a one-of. Time Space. I love the versatility here of like any extra deck summon. So that's like pretty much any deck in the game outside of like, I guess you could say Eldritch right now, but other than Eldritch, it's great. It's a cool one-of. Void Trap Hole, a little bit too specific. I'm going to pass. Network Trap Hole, a little bit too specific. Going to pass. Floodgate, probably a one-of. I think this is probably, like, I sometimes just go back and forth on this and Time Space trying to decide which one I actually like more. I think I probably like Floodgate, to be honest, just because of where the deck is now with the Amazement stuff, with the Dogmatica stuff, with the ability for the deck to be faster turn 1. I kind of just like the fact that the deck can out these big chungus monsters that have been set much more easy. So fine, good there. Deep Dark Trap Hole, a little bit too specific, but I guess in a certain format it could be really good. Bottomless. I actually really like Bottomless. The one thing that's nice about Bottomless is Floodgate, the monster's still going to end up in Graveyard. Time Space, the monster goes back to the deck. So against something like Eldritch, they still got the Eldritch back in deck, and as long as they have more ways to pull it out, they're going to get it again. Whereas Bottomless just says gone for the duel. And I do think there is some legitimacy for arguing that Bottomless is generic enough, hitting enough things, but also getting rid of it for the remainder of the duel in most duels. So this is definitely one you're going to have to look at, see how much destruction protection is out there in the format at the moment. And if there's not a ton and his banish is valuable enough, he might really be worth it, and he's definitely worth a look as a cool one-of. And then Trap Hole, it's generic, which is pretty good, but it only hits normal summons or flip summons. Yeah, it's just if your opponent's normal summon isn't turn stopping by stopping it, then I'm not worrying about Trap Hole. So those are all of my thoughts on all the Trap Hole cards. I really wanted to go in depth here. I am a Traptrix player. I plan on playing this deck very much so more, especially after Lightning Overdrive, and really figuring out the best way I can play the deck. And yeah, I'm just really excited. I want to talk about this because it's always something there's definitely different theories on. I've seen different people play different lineups of trap holes, and I wanted to give my thoughts on what I think about all the trap holes, and just hopefully give you somewhat of an outline on what you even should be considering. Line them up, decide based off of the meta, decide based off of what you want your deck to do, what you're scared of, and all that kind of stuff. Hopefully this helped. That's good over here tonight, guys. 20 minutes long. That's pretty long for a discussion video, but thank you so much for watching. If you made it this far, go ahead and sub to the channel. I'm bringing you Traptrix content soon. I'm bringing you a bunch of different deck profiles from Lightning Overdrive. This is one of those sets where I'm just like, damn, that's a deck I want to build with that support. That's a deck I want to build with that support. That's a deck I want to build with that support. Traptrix tops that list, but there's a bunch others. So I'm bringing a bunch of deck profiles soon, and I'm really excited. So Thanks for watching. I'll catch you in the next video, guys. Thank you again. Peace.